because I'm having a nerding episode right now. I am nerding the fuck out right now. Okay. I'm gonna just try to sum it up because I've taken some notes and I've done a little bit of research. Not nearly enough research. Not nearly enough. I've done idiot research. Okay. I what I'm saying right here. These are the musings of a person who is acting. This is a creative work of someone who's having an episode. Okay, because what the entire fuck? Like, I'm sitting here thinking to myself, okay? It's always some shit like this for me. It's a dangerous thing for me to, you know what I'm saying? Especially when I got shit to do and I'm thinking as I'm, anyway, I'm doing things that are complex and I'm thinking while I'm doing things. Anyway, fuck. Okay, so I'm not going to even speak about how I got here. I want to know if we understand that, like, why we're not able to see certain things. And the construct that I want to bring in is think of a camera, for instance, right? It can, depending on the type of camera, how fast the refresh rate is on it, it can be 30 frames per second, something like that, okay? Essentially, cameras that we could get commercially or even professionally move or try to move at the same rate that the human eye moves. But there are special nanospeed cameras that move so much faster that are able to pick up on variables that we're not able to see with the naked eye. Okay, I know that I've heard several who I would consider to be prominent astrologers talk about we imagine, like, we're imagining our reality, right? Essentially, and that we're not even able to see so much more of what's going on around us. And after just kind of doing some deep diving, all of this really came off of the heels. This is so crazy. It came off of the heels of me seeing one of my favorite perfume reviewer, like people who give us the tea on what's going on with different colognes and perfumes. And it wasn't until I was typing in my freaking community page about, okay, I am one of those people, a proponent, of person who, as a woman, I will wear male perfume or cologne because of our chemical differences. And then that opened up a whole other, like, dimension of thinking for me. And if you've seen my search engine right now, it's crazy. Okay? Fuck tabs, bitch. I have a literal Google websites that are set up for what I've actually been searching. You know what? I should test what I've been searching against Grok on X to see if there's some differentials that I'll get. So I might actually do that tonight. But as I was going through this whole thing of the dynamic of men and women, our chemicals, what makes us up, the first thing that came to me is that I was talking about, like, our chemicals and the way that we smell. Like, if you're musty, you're musty shit, and how those chemicals are so different from one another, the way women smell and the way that men smell. And as I was talking about that, it led me over to what happens when the embryo decides that it's no longer, like, once the the Y chromosome kicks in, and instead of continuing to form an inward as a female child or a female embryo, it forms into a male. Then it would all into some other shit, okay? Crazy. And I found myself, my search is so crazy. Man, listen, I'm doing a disservice right now. I should be live, so in showing you, like, I should be on my on an OBS system, and I will. Maybe I'll do this. I'm gonna parking lot this, where I'm showing you the search thread, because the search thread is tea. It's tea, but it's insanity. Okay, it is absolutely insanity. It took me from the nature of male and female to ovulation. That's what I was talking. I was talking about ovulation, and if men are, essentially we have the same parts, the starting point, but they inverse for men, then male horniness or readiness to have sex, almost the way that men talk, and no shade, but even the way that trans women talk about their desire for sex, or the way in which you desire sex, or like partnering is controlled by different mechanics than what women are like. It's there's a difference. We're all the same, but we're not the same. Okay, there's a lot of differences here, because the the way that men talk about sex, whether they're heterosexual or homosexual, or if they're a trans woman, is different, and it's always going to be like the rate of it, or the experience of the desire is different than a trans man who was born biologically female. By huge, like there's a huge difference, which is one of the reasons why there's a disconnect between, I believe, the conversations of trans women and cisgendered or biological women, for lack of better terms. That's why trans women tend to find maybe kinship around gay men more so than with women, because the things in which the conversations are different. Yes, trans women sit at the intersection, and to be quite honest with you, trans women or trans men kind of represent a divine principle. But what I'm saying is that the sexual needs are different or function differently than the actual sexual needs of women. And yes, it's important. It absolutely is important, because I don't think women understand, or we underestimate, like with men, how what their horniness is like. We just think, oh, you're just a dog, you're just a freak. But if I'm correct, at my big age, in the conversations I've had with women, and the type of shit we get into when we're ovulating, whether we get into it with our husbands, our long-term boyfriends, and for some women, they don't really have a barrier. I'm not finna hate on those women, but they don't have a barrier of who they want. It's their choice, I guess, Some of the things that we're willing to try and do to satisfy that very, very strong push. At the end of the day, it is to reproduce. That's the biological function. I know that you can have sex without having children. I get that. But the push to reproduce and the pleasure that's derived from it comes before sex for pleasure. We found out sex is pleasurable from the urge to biologically reproduce. Okay? So creation. All right? Okay. If women, if you're a woman listening to me, or whenever you get this, how would it change the way that you view things when you think about what you're like sexually, how you operate sexually with your husband, if you still find yourself sexually attracted to them, and if you are, hopefully, with God blessings, you are healthy enough to have a full sexual experience. Think about those things there. Or when you getting something satisfied for you during your ovulation. If you can concentrate that down to something that happens every day or every other day, would that help you understand the motivation behind men? As a woman, like I don't expect you to answer me, but as a woman, would that help you understand where their mind is? Okay, to help to even go and fuck PC culture. If you've ever slept with someone and it was a one night stand and you were all about it and probably slept with them a couple of times, even if you were on birth control, even if you used condoms, whatever, during your ovulation period. And after your ovulation period, you didn't want to have anything to do with them. Okay? I'm trying to help give you a scale of like to help you understand something. If you've ever had an experience where you wish that you can have a time machine, it's not because of the way they treated you, you just saw them differently after that itch was scratched. And you were no longer interested. Or it wasn't what you thought it like I hate to say it this way. You know that you were at the bottom of a trash bin. Okay? Type shit, right? If that's ever happened to you, and I hate to say it this way, and you had that post ovulation realization. I'm trying to narrate this or illustrate it for you. If you've ever had that, it doesn't happen often with women because of our rate of things. But for those who maybe, in the trade of selling sex, maybe they have some stories about it. I don't know. But if this ever happened to you, imagine it happening a couple of times a week or once a week. Okay? Could you imagine the urges that you feel when you're at full ovulation, when you are releasing the egg, when your body is saying fuck? Like it's not like for men it's the nut button, but it's like your body is, you become something that's not human. You're subhuman. Like the emotion and the chemical release that need is on a subhuman level, bitch. That's why a lot of women, when they're ovulating, they'll say, I'm being feral. I'm an alley cat. That is not your constant state of existing. We like to think it is, but it's not. It's driven by a biological function. Me explaining it that way, would that help you understand men? If that function was with them on a day-to-day basis. I'm not saying this to soften how we think about men or to harden how we think about men or to soften the way that men think about women or harden the way that men think about women. I'm just trying to help us, or at least really it's like help us understand or translate this in a way. If you take those moments and where you were, extreme, and for us it's extreme because we don't have in this lifetime a reference of having male parts and the same type of chemical or hormones coursing through our veins. So the closest thing that I can make it analogous to is the height of ovulation. Take that and make it happen every day. Okay, now let me help you understand. So if we can do that, perfect. Now, take the height of ovulation and you're with the man that you absolutely want to be with. There's no question about it. Whatever you thought he was, he actually is, at least at that time period for you. Or he continues to be that for those of you who are married or on your way down the aisle. He is who you desire, right? He is all of those things. Okay? So the type of sex you're having with him at the height of your ovulation, at the height of it, when I'm talking when your orgasms are damn near can send you into like a spectrum of autism. That's the best way that I can explain it. Which then takes me down a whole other rabbit hole, but we're not going to do that today. Okay? If you've never experienced that, God bless you. And I hope that in your lifetime you experience it and it's something that you can have for a lengthy amount of time and that person you can do life with. If that's something you want. Okay? But it's the person, they do it for you. You would this is gonna sound if okay, you want them so bad that you would masturbate to them. And that has to be a lot for women. Some women it doesn't, because some women, due to chemical makeup, it can even be overcompensation for trauma, sexual identity. There could be all sorts of shit that happens with women that determines how we express sexuality. But this person, obviously, there's other factors that lead you to this outside of your sexual attraction to them. There's other factors about this person, how they treat you, how they talk, the conversations you have with them, the lifestyles that you both share, the compatibility outside of the act of sex. There's almost like a finally, or yes, this like I can see how this person was formed from the same cloth as me, right? If you can understand that, can you possibly, for those who are single and struggling, understand that why every man that you sleep with or that you want to sleep with may not see you the same way that he sees the woman he actually wants to be with? Can it help you understand that? Like the height of that? If you think, just think, if you don't have these experiences, I'm so sorry. Because I'm not able to really make it make sense for you. Because it's something that you've yet to experience. But this person, you are that person. Like, you're the person. The stuff that we hold out for sometimes. Or that we stop dealing with other people for. That person versus I'm ovulating every day and I just need to get this taken care of. And society doesn't look down on me for doing so. So I'm socialized to be able to sow my royal oats. So I don't have the guilt that women have, obviously, and the responsibility either on some level. So I don't get the shame associated with the rate of partners that I have. If anything, it will contribute to the wholeness of my masculinity or my manhood versus women. Okay? Can you understand, if you just think about what I'm saying? You know the difference between having an orgasm from a man that you are having pity sex with, or you know you should have never did anything with, or it was trash, versus someone that it was good and you like being with this person. So that just, it amplifies everything else, okay? And they like you the same way. So it's not, you're not projecting onto this person. It's a mutual feeling. With women, it generally our orgasms hit different when we're safe. When we're safe, our orgasms hit different than they do when we're on the limb. They do. So, safe, what I mean by that is in what seems to be a regular relationship that seems to be forming into a commitment that could potentially be a marriage. It hits different for the most part if she's in love with the man. God bless her if, in it. But anyhow, Can you understand that difference between him and think of all the times your whole life and how special, if you're already married, how special that person is in comparison to anyone that you've dated or slept with before? And then have that ovulation period happen every day for you. In society, the way society is handled. Can that help you understand why begging someone, competing for, doing all that goofy shit is crazy as hell? Especially if there's no similarities between you and their mother. Even if she wasn't very good to him. But especially, we'll get into that another day. I'm not really going to go down this rabbit hole right here. Okay? I'm making it, I don't want to stay on this for too long, but I want you to consider that before you try to make someone like you. I want you to consider that. I want you to consider how much time and effort you put into trying to make someone see your qualities. And I want you to think back on the men that you would never tell anyone you slept with. And how if that person were to do the same thing, especially if they don't, okay, I'm talking about they don't have the looks, the money, the security, or the intellect. There's nothing that you can be inspired by. And yet they do all of these things. I want to know, are you irritated? Because you feel sorry for them, because you know that even with everything they're doing, it was a mistake in the first place for sex to even have happened. Okay? If you can, I want you to try to minimize these things and look at men as having those markers of an ovulation on a daily basis. And what ovulation can sometimes, if you're a single woman, the choices that you make sexually, you wouldn't make if you weren't ovulating. I want you to kind of think about that for a second before you go out here and you live upon the narrative that men ain't shit because of how they treat me. And instead you say, I ain't been worth a damn to myself. Okay? Because, and I'm not saying this for you to feel bad or for us to feel bad as women. Not at all. I'm saying that for you to actually take some power back, where you're not a victim of your own decision making or lack thereof active decision making, and more or less a victim of circumstance of your biology. Okay? And if I can bring into perspective what you feel like at the height of your ovulation, and this man is telling you all the things he's telling you, I want you to be able to see this and say, wait a minute, he's ovulating. He's ovulating. He's going to say whatever the fuck he needs to say for that to get up off of him. He can't even trust what the fuck he's saying right now. You understand what I'm saying? Especially if you're talking about someone who has no sexual, and I'm not to speak down on men, but no sexual control. He doesn't have any discipline in that area so that he knows himself and knows how he feels. He doesn't know how to command that part of him. He is truly, out here in the world. He doesn't have the knowledge that a man even could have sexual control in that kind of way, right? I hope that that helps you understand something that's really important, and how much of your yes to a lot of situations are responsible for the things that you now say no to. Because if we're talking about the return of the goddess, and we're talking about the elevation of the dark goddess, and we're talking about this goddess energy, goddesses are gods. They're one and the same, which means that they have a God understanding, right? Which means that they don't exist in confusion. Confusion is a spell. And so if you ever look at mythos and you see that there's a god or goddess existing in a state of confusion, they have been poisoned, or they have been put under the spell of a much more powerful god or goddess. But the God body doesn't exist in confusion, and it doesn't exist in blame. It is fully aware of war and peace. It is fully aware of its own actions and what led up to a certain thing. And I'm not talking about where abuse has been experienced. So please, let's if we can, let's be reasonable in receiving this information in such a way that we can recognize that maybe we're not able to receive it because we're still healing through a situation that has corrupted the relationship between men and women for us for a bit of time. Okay? And with that, I'm asking for you to be very gentle with yourself. You don't it doesn't have to be your reality. Okay? Y'all know that they do the stream crash thing, okay? So you know that I have a person who, or a group of people that do what they do, all right? So I'm going to speak as though there's no one here, and this is my personal diary, okay? So with that said, I hope that that helps you understand why you, as someone who experiences it in a slower pace and leads and is led up to ovulation in that uptick and surge of sexual hormones, now have a lot more command than the opposite sex. And the things that we project onto other people when we're not used to men who are nurturing or good to us, to where we can make a comparison, or we spent enough time around safe men in quotation marks, that we're able to see a difference between men that we're dating, whether they like us or they don't like us. Because a lot of women, unfortunately, it can be due to their father, it can be due to a lot of things, are not familiar with being around men who were not interested or acting on them in a way that was harmful or sexual. So they don't have a contrast between men who admire them, like them for real, and men who just want to have sex with them. Okay? So in that case, I'm just trying to help you understand the difference in the intensity of the desire and how the rate of desire works in this analogy with men in comparison to women. Okay? That's the first thing, all right? So that's the first line that I went down, child. Okay? Which led into some other interstellar ass shit. All right? And I really am doing it, I'm doing it a disservice, but let me just say this here. The piece about men and women is so important because a human fetus, once the egg has decided which sperm that she's going to allow, to unpack his DNA, because there are several sperm can become embedded, and literally the egg will decide which one that's embedded that she wants to allow in. Okay? She has full command. She can even self-terminate, but we're not going to even get into those particulars right here. Okay? Down to how we come from the sperm to the egg to the refresh rate. And I'm using this specifically for how a fetus grows, the refresh rate. The way that I was introduced to the way that babies are formed. They come from a collection of cells. But if you look at the cells, they're moving. They're jiggling. Some scientists say that they're moving a lot faster than what the human eye can actually pick up on under a telescope. They're moving a lot faster than what we're able to see. Okay? And why that's important, and why that led me to some other things, because we're still dealing with the human condition, is that if you've ever meditated, if you've ever done any type of spiritual work, mediumship, seance, that you were conscious in, and you felt like your body was vibrating, right? It's like a buzz all around your body, like from head to toe, just buzzing, okay? To the point where it makes your experience feel a certain kind of way. I want to capture that right there. And I want to say that this is a window point, a portal, if you will, for some people when they are able to astral travel or have what's called an outer body experience, dimensionally. Because the body, whether you're conscious of it or not, is moving at a much faster rate. And whatever plasma or electrical impulses that are powered through whatever substance we are outside of this flesh suit is moving at a certain rate. There are certain things that you can see that you cannot see grounded to this reality. Okay? And just like we do when we are fetuses, when we're fetuses, we are multiplying over and over. Literally, the cell is separating itself and making copies of itself over and over and over and over again until it builds out the fetus itself. Okay? Think about your God body and your experience being a cell in that God body experience. Okay, just to simplify what I'm saying. So you're here, and there's so many different theories in the spiritual realm about, dimensionally speaking, that there are other dimensions in which we exist in, right? And even down to the timelines. Like some people, I think, that get into this occult. I know the group that likes to play with my numbers does this. They get into these occult groups and they get into destiny swapping by looking at the birth chart, looking at the different houses and doing spell work to position themselves in that person's house so that they can take that experience, because they believe that that's the point of fortune for them to enter into that person's destiny to take for themselves. Okay? Okay. Some people may even try to operate on your point of fortune position if they are able to have your chart, and they'll just constantly do spiritual work in order to reposition themselves. Okay? But they don't have, if they actually had God, like Godhead knowledge, they would see why that is an error on the repeating of the cells that they are. Because you don't stop dividing into different parts of yourself just because you're born out of the womb as a conscious being for just yourself. There are multiple ways in which you are divided on a spiritual level. And some people who have participated, at least in the entertainment industry, with destiny swapping, they somehow strangely met an end that otherwise, if they were on their own path, they would have not. So some people can even evade their time leaving the earth by someone else stepping in and having and taking the position. So that's really interesting too, if they're successful. Okay, a lot of people get into things and they think that they have control over other people, and don't realize that they are being lured by their lower octave nature and by their own imbalances into a trap of their own making, where they cannot blame the person. They can only blame the state of existence that they were in emotionally, mentally, and spiritually that led them to be tricked, or they tricked themselves, or they moved themselves out of their position due to greed, jealousy. This is why I talk about greed and jealousy and wrath and anger that is projected at other people. I talk about this a lot because there's a faction of individuals who don't realize that they're going to hit the brick wall, and according to physics, you're going to stay in motion even though the car has stopped. Does that make sense? Because you're attempting to get into a vehicle that you don't have the mechanics of. It's kind of the way that the universe solves some things for itself. Okay? It's like a quick exit, but an exit that doesn't satisfy what your purpose is here or in this particular dimension. So you got the karma of what happened, and you still got unfinished business. So the weight of those burdens are still on the soul. You see what I'm saying? So you didn't solve anything. It's with you. And no shade, but the best way that I can show you that to be true is why Haiti is not a first world country that it should be. It should have been it should be Haiti and Cuba should be, by definition and population, the first world countries with the most people of color. But when you are under the spell of why the country or Española is named Haiti, and then you express what, because Haiti means, look up what the name Haiti means. Look up go and type in your Google what Haiti means, and you'll understand why and how a Masonic spell has been placed on Espanol. You'll understand exactly how the people turn in on themselves. Something as simple as a name can reroute your wealth to someone else. So if you have a lot of Bokors or Mumbos or people specializing in zombies and destiny swapping and things of that nature, it is the direct effect of the overall destiny swap that has taken place to the whole group of people. The individuals are just expressing the effects of what has happened to them. So you can't even blame Haitians for the state of Haiti, because It is the direct expression from old Masonic magic, from its French courts that in a way, on a spiritual in a spiritual way, kept Haiti from what otherwise would have been a first world nation. Okay? This is what happens, that Haiti and absolutely the countries within the continent of Africa, even who have had leadership from African or their countrymen, supposedly, of their elite classes. If you want to understand what destiny swapping looks like, look no further than nations and cities in the United States of America that are populated heavily with black bodies and how they treat each other. And you will understand exactly what happens when someone destiny swaps. There's a violence, a disturbance with you, a lack of peace with you, because the anger is not coming from necessarily poverty. For instance, I point to Singapore. Singapore experienced poverty, but they didn't have the hangups or the perpetual spell of poverty, which is why, with a couple of different changes over the course of 50 to 60 years, they became one of the world's leading in technology resources and they're what is it, their whatever their form of GDP is. Okay, for a Singapore, for such a place that's so small, the type of weaponry and the military that they have is incredible. That's not, they don't have the same spell placed upon them that is placed upon what would be considered African or Nubian or Kemetic or melanated nations. And the evidence is how they treat each other. Singapore went into a no crime, no act, like no drunkardness, no drugs, and everyone fell in line with that, and everyone benefits and is in support of that. Versus our nations fell into prostitution, drugs. Okay, if you want to see what destiny swapping looks like, look no further than melanated nations and the names and what the names of those nations mean. Okay, and which person, which country colonized them. This is not an anti-white talk. It is so that you can understand what's happening in that country amongst its own people and how it mirrors what has happened to you. That's one of the reasons why there's such an upset in France. People don't understand that on a quantum, like in within a quantum physics level, what is happening to Europe is the byproduct of where European colonies, the fallout that took place upon the colonies that were created or taken over or dominated. And so until those things are made right, even if there is an attempt and a win of world domination, it's going to crumble again, because where they have named themselves or colonized peoples from are in disarray. And until those nations are out of disarray, Europe is going to mirror that experience. That is the quantum field. Okay? Quantum physics denotes that your other half or the other cell on a, if we look at it from a distant cell, at the moment that you think about it, the message has gotten to them, to that version of yourself or that complement of yourself in the quantum mechanics field. Okay? You could be separated by a galaxy and still be in communication with one another by simply talking to yourself. So if you go and you are a British, you're British and you have British colonies, the conditions of British colonies will dictate the condition to Britain, the eventual condition to Britain. Okay? I just want to say that right there. And the same thing, if we look, that's the macro. If we look at the micro level, the condition that people find themselves in because someone uh, performed a destiny swap will be the eventual and the concentrated experience that the person who did the swapping, was in command of that, is going to experience. And in order for them to evade that, they're going to have to do it again and again and again, making their debt in this lifetime, or they're making them just that much more distant from their dharma for their next lifetime, if we go by this school of thought, because they're replicating the issue and they're not solving for the issue that they came into this world with from their ancestry. And we see that in the heaviness of black communities, the thickness of it. It's not that people are running away because they don't love being black. It is the spell that is poured upon black people and the thickness of the burden of unresolved trauma, unresolved karma, and the recycling of life over and over again with heavier karma that makes people want to separate from the idea of blackness in any form that we find it, or bleakness, okay? Or sell out, become a sellout, okay? I just want to say that. And you can actually find, I'm not going to go into detail here because of the nature of how this channel, how YouTube has not corrected this. I don't think that what I'm saying deserves to be explained and linked in this environment. Okay? Because it won't be received well, because this environment cannot hold it. So I hope that you are following me. If you are interested in the things that I'm talking about on other platforms, and that you come to those platforms with a certain amount of energy and awareness and elevation and evolution from whatever brought you here. Okay? Because if not, you're not going to be able to receive that. Okay? But the things that we're going to be talking about is the book of Enoch and the books of Moses, the continuation of the Enochian principles as it relates to Moses, and if we can detect in the Bible and its translations the technology that we're just now arriving to as it relates to quantum mechanics and physics. Okay? And the things that I want to speak on as it relates to that is in the book of Moses, or in Genesis, when Moses goes to the burning bush, it is stated that once he has that conversation with God, God gives Moses the 10 commandments, right? And Moses comes back, would he go up there at 20, 30, and he comes back 60 or 70 years old, okay? Which denotes that his body went through a form of decay in a short period of time, to the form of 30 to 40 years of decay, which then denotes that the telomeres, I hope I'm saying that correctly, which are little, think of when you get a fresh pen. It's not a pen, but think of if I took a toothpick and I had these little like rubber, if I took like something and made like a rubber end to a toothpick, okay? And each time I'm exposed to food, radiation, stress, alcohol, disease, and as my body's repairing itself, dividing new cells to repair those those things. The telomeres that are on the end of those cells that help us complete the replacement of the cell becomes thinner and thinner and thinner. So within a matter of however long Moses was on that mountain, he aged or his body decayed in the face of radiation. Okay? Think about what is stated by man as when that book was written. Radiation is the only thing I can think of that would cause the body to exhaust cellular duplication at that rate, which then denotes something else. A lot of the things that were written in the Bible were not going to be understood until science caught up to spirituality. And the dogmatic ways in which we follow biblical or any holy book, when you actually look at the text and you apply it to what would be the defining factor that would make it so that Moses lives 300 years after decaying 30 or 40 years. What would be the specific in what would need to happen to the human body, the environment of the human body? Okay? All right? And it is stated that Enoch becomes what Metatron, like that's the first human that we can, ascribe to, becomes an angelic figure, actually one of the most powerful beside Archangel Michael, and that's Metatron. But he started out as a human, and he also was a prophet, which seen visions from God. What if we were to denote what would have to happen to the human body to experience such a thing, especially if one is in a meditative state? How fast would we have to vibrate, or how fast would the refresh rate on our sight, on human sight, have to be to pick up those changes in the environment, or to then denote that matter is not a solid thing? How fast would I need to vibrate to see? In other words, this is a physics question. How fast would I need to vibrate to see that the wall that's in front of me is not a solid structure, but instead it is held together by various bindings in which I can manipulate without destroying the structure, and go through it without destroying the structure whatsoever, or my physical vessel? How fast, and would the physical vessel be able to handle that? And I'm going to go back to radiation, because what is the one thing that we can point to? And I'm trying to simplify my points here. What is the one thing that goes through you, is able to take a complete picture of you without separating you at all? An X-ray. What is an X-ray? Is a form of what? Radiation. But the light from an X-ray can go through you in order to draft a picture of your skeletal system without separating the physical matter that is you. However, if you continue to be exposed to that radiation, then there's going to be some damage to the cell's ability to reproduce. Okay? Thus causing early decay in your body, or aging. Okay? So I want you to just look at, when you read these stories, I want you to try to look at it from a science fiction perspective. because that might answer questions as to what reincarnation is and help you understand that as humanity, we actually are behind technologically. We are very much behind. Because under a set of circumstances, if I were exposed to a certain controllable amount of radiation, my hair would start to grow gray at a much faster rate. I would start to develop wrinkles at a much faster rate. I would start to lose less elasticity in my skin at a much faster rate. You ever hear when people say you're living the fast life? You're going too fast. You can see it on their face. You look too grown. Like if you're a girl, you probably experience what they say. You looking real grown out here. You're living too fast. But when people say you're living fast, it denotes aging. It denotes a level you're becoming wise about something too fast. So there is an aging of your body, an aging of your look. Okay? Which then brought me to the principle of even though we're in the same space. Now, mind you, I'm a spiritualist. Everything I'm saying here is for entertainment purposes. And we're talking about anti-aging, or people who can age backwards, or it seems as though they age backwards and or their aging is slowed down. Okay? In order for that to happen, one would have to be moving at a very, there's two things. You could say that you could make a theory, for instance, with the law of relativity. Outside of the Earth's gravity pull, if you were traveling fast, almost as fast as the speed of light, that while everyone else is aging, you would actually preserve yourself. So there is a theory that these people who maintain youthfulness may have a bit more of an introspective nature, more meditative nature to them. And the reason why they're able to see and make connections and connect the dots with very advanced and broad subject matter is because for them, time moves slower. And in the dimension that they existed, within the same dimension that you're in, within the quantum field that they're in, time is moving slower. So they're able to denote the fine details of a thing that otherwise, for those who are moving faster, seeking a faster result, are not able to accomplish that end without an injury to them or what they're building or why there's so much repair that's needed. Because they're not able to see the details that otherwise would be afforded to someone that's living on borrowed time. So time moves much slower. They're able to get a lot of shit done. I'm pointing this out because I wanted. This was what I was thinking about when I was watching the Twilight Zone episode. I thought, just like the astronaut or the actor who played the astronaut thought that maybe they were moving so fast, dimensionally different than the people who were in what looks like to be in suspended motion, that they weren't able to, basically if they were moving at light speed, let's just say hypothetically, they're not, but I'm just saying hypothetically, if they're moving that fast, the people wouldn't see them, wouldn't respond to them. And the people would seem as though they're moving really slow in comparison to them. Okay? And they're moving so fast that they are pretty much invisible to the naked eye. Naked eye the is not able to pick up on them because they're moving so fast. Okay? And if it did pick up on them, it picks up on them like a tail or a shadow. And some people who do dark magic are aware of this when they send certain spirits to people. That spirit is moving so fast that it can leave a shadow, cast a shadow, or if you are like me and you are versed in both sides of the work, when you're working with angelic figures, you get these puffs of white smoke because it's moving so fast that you're not able to see the form unless you are in some sort of elevated meditative state to where you can then pick up on what's in your environment that's moving at a much faster rate. I would even propose that when people transition or when whether there's death of animals or people, that the essence of the person is moving so much faster, which is why you get certain scents or you get a brush across your face or like a wind to let you know that something is here. Because otherwise, because it's moving through things. Otherwise, it's detached from the physical form, but it's moving so fast that it can reach you in dream state or meditative state, or when you raise your frequency. Literally, if you're operating on clean energy, you're not heavy with guilt, you're not heavy with shame, you're not heavy with illnesses, and you're vibrating at a much higher frequency, those people can actually make out entities that otherwise at a lower frequency you can't see, which then begs the question about people who are schizophrenic. For me, is it that science denotes them to be schizophrenic or autistic, or they have all of these different things because science has not caught up to advanced quantum physics or advanced quantum mechanics to understand what that person's experiencing and or seeing? What's the deal? I think that there are government agencies that understand exactly what I'm saying. I just don't understand it fully. But I'll just give it to you like this. One time I did a meditation when I actually first started working with Sekhmet. And I was in deep meditation and doing my chants until I was going into just a trance. And as I went into that trance, that vibration started. And as I went into trance, I started to make out the image of light, of this being. Okay? That's really important in magic for us to understand. Sometimes you might want to try to heal somebody with magic, and what you don't understand is that it's that person's time, and the act of healing them actually helps them release themselves from this dimension. Because the healing is in that, for that person, let's say that they are terminally ill, that healing is separation from the body. So maybe that can help you understand why certain types of spells with that person's conscious agreement you probably don't want to do versus those that you do. And even those who hex people, those people who are on the receiving end of that hex, have to give consent. Because it's going to be based on the triggers of their lower frequency. Okay? This is the reason why we pray. This is the reason why we fast. We fast because it cleans out the fuel. It gives us clean fuel. And through that clean fuel, we're able to think clear about our decisions. And we're able to make better decisions. We're able to hear God. We're able to hear and gain inspiration otherwise that we wouldn't gain inspiration. from when we're heavy in the thick of earthly life versus in meditation, eating clean, or in fasting. You're able to hear these things. Your intuition skyrockets. You're able to come to terms with why something happened. You're able to gain reasoning in your life for things through those meditative or fasting rituals, yogas, or practices. Okay? Whether that speeds you up or slows you down. With regular meditation, you're able to slow down the clock or speed yourself up to where you, or one could say, are you slowing down the clock or are you moving so fast that you've given yourself more time? You're not moving fast as it relates to in a dense way. You're moving on a spiritual level. You're vibrating so high that you're able to make things happen in a short amount of time that otherwise would take lifetimes. So we're not always in the same place. So I want to say that. I hope that I'm able to explain. Mind you, what I really came here to talk about is far denser than what I'm saying here. I'm skimming the surface of what I processed and written down. I'm skimming the surface of it. But this is what's available to us when we are reaching enlightenment. And the reason why on my community page, I posted the speed in which light moves per minute, per second, per day, per week, month, and year. The speed of light from one place to us, so where we can make it visible, is for you to understand how fast enlightenment can give you codes. When they say light codes, how fast that is coming into your awareness where things become crystal clear. It looks like you have 20/20 vision. A man who's physically blind can be perfectly sighted because the clarity of enlightenment is moving so fast and is so intense that it expands your awareness. That's not something that you can fake. And for bodies that are not able to retain it or are at lower levels due to jealousy, anger, coveting, meaning if you desire to take something from someone, that's coveting. You don't get a pass for the sin, or you don't get held down by the virtue. It is what it is. The sin is just the opposite of working order. It is just the anti-work versus the working order is a virtue, or what would keep it in working order. What would destroy the working order would be the sin. Think of the sin as the thing that causes decay on the life, okay? And so in decay of the life, wrath, envy, jealousy, that sort of thing, coveting, gluttony, we see that with being overweight, how that reduces one's life expectancy. We can see how those living in those sins shortens the life and ages the body a lot faster. So if you're seeing someone who maintains youth, not because they're small or they're short, but vitality is something that's emitting from the inside of them, and how they talk, the wonderment, that person is operating on a higher octave, and you won't understand what they're saying. So it's not fair for you to be subjugated to the things that they're talking about, because it doesn't make sense at the frequency in which you are vibrating, gyrating, or your vibe is at. When your vibe is much higher, it all makes sense. It doesn't make sense when you're in a lower frequency. Okay? Which makes it so evil that we experience poverty. Because without poverty, it would actually, if what my theory is as it relates to this, poverty is what will keep us from moving up the Kardashev scale as it relates to human evolution. That the invention actually of commerce and of the Western world's way of trading money absolutely keeps us stupid. If we didn't have to worry about essentials for life, the intellectual level of humanity would be much higher. The spiritual connection of humanity and compassion would be far greater. But the frequency of feeling like you're going to lose your car, your home, you're not going to be able to feed yourself or your children, puts you into what? Your root chakra. It brings you on the lower scale, the lower octaves, your root chakra, your sacral, and your solar plexus, where you have low self esteem, you have lack of sexual discipline, and you are willing to take and kill and steal in order to survive. Those are the three octaves rotating in the wrong direction. But poverty can absolutely affect these three things here. Versus if we were to raise our frequency, the troubles that we run into, we have a different level of clarity of how to solve them. That's all I'm saying. Okay, so those are the things that I'm going to touch on. But again, I think that I'm going to table this. I wanted to talk about this because I'm going to use this conversation right here as a thesaurus, and not as a thesaurus, I'm sorry, as a syllabus in which I'm going to build off of. Okay, so that's one of the reasons I'm here really for myself. This is my diary and my creative working. If you are watching and it says that you're at a 0, that's where you are. Okay, it's for me. Okay, so if you are able to hear this, I hope that it has expanded you wherever you exist. I hope it has expanded your understanding, or at least caused a level of curiosity in you to where you go and start looking for the truth of the matter. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and head off. Y'all have a good one. Enjoy your Saturday. Happy Saturday, by the way. Happy Sabbath. Y'all have a good night.